From Harriet Tubman, Conductor on the Underground Railroad. Guided close read. The word underground means secret or hidden in this context, and not literally under the ground. The subject of this biography had the nickname Moses because, like the biblical Moses, she led enslaved people to freedom. A biography is a true account of a person's life that is told by someone other than the subject. This excerpt from a biography begins with information about how the subject, Harriet Tubman, is viewed by others. Reread lines 1 through 6. What is revealed about the subject? Pause while you think. Tubman is known as Moses and is a figure of mystery to the masters of slaves in Maryland. How does the structure of the paragraph show the master's illogical reaction to Moses? Pause while you think. The first sentences say that the masters did not believe Moses existed, but later sentences indicate that they watched for him and offered rewards for his capture. Authors use a technique called characterization to reveal what a person is like. Characterization can be shown through the traits and actions of the person or through how the person is seen by others. The author's characterization of Harriet Tubman shifts from the viewpoint of the masters to the viewpoint of Tubman herself. Her actions reveal her qualities. Reread lines 33 through 46. Summarize Tubman's actions in running off slaves. What do those actions show about her character? Pause while you think. She announces her arrival by singing the spiritual Go Down Moses near the slaves' quarter. She spends days planning the trip and selecting the slaves. She waits for a clear Saturday night and then calls like a whippoorwill or a hoot owl to signal time for departure. These actions show that Tubman is careful, organized, and brave. Author's craft refers to the methods authors use to make their writing lively and vivid. Reread lines 42 through 46. What is the effect of the author's choice to describe her voice in this vivid way? Pause while you think. By comparing Tubman's voice to a murmur borne on the wind, the author is suggesting secrecy and also helping readers hear a gentle, soft, low song. Characterization in a biography includes information about the subject's thoughts and feelings. Reread lines 71 through 78. How does Tubman seem to deal with feelings of fear? Pause while you think. She knows that the group is being pursued and is half afraid of being caught, knowing that she will be hanged, but she doesn't let these fears control her and keeps going. How does the author compare Tubman's possible fate to that of the runaways? Pause while you think. While the runaways will be whipped and sold south, Tubman will be hanged. An author may use sentence fragments or incomplete sentences for their effect. A fragment may suggest a powerful idea or a short burst of thought. Reread lines 74 through 76. Identify the sentence fragments. What effect do these fragments have on the reader? Pause while you think. 11 of them. $11,000 worth of flesh and bone and muscle that belonged to Maryland planters. These fragments have emotional impact because they emphasize that the 11 human beings are not individuals, just flesh and bone and muscle, property worth $1,000 each. Repeated grammatical constructions are called parallelism. An author may use parallelism to create rhythm and to emphasize similar ideas. Reread lines 104 through 108. Identify the parallelism. Read the sentence aloud to listen for effects of repetition. Pause while you think. Somehow she would have to instill courage into these 11 people, most of them strangers, would have to feed them on hope and bright dreams of freedom. The parallelism emphasizes the challenge Tubman is facing. The author is providing historical information about a person and place on the Underground Railroad. Reread lines 132 through 148. Explain the connection between Thomas Garrett and Tubman. Identify details that suggest Tubman's view of Garrett. Pause while you think. His shoe store was a stop on the Underground Railroad where Tubman brought fugitives for rest and safety. She viewed him as a kind, generous person doing God's work. Kept a pail of milk and a loaf of bread in the drawer of his desk so that he would have food ready at hand for any of God's poor. She thought he was clever. Boxes of shoes, so that you would never guess that the wall actually opened. Syntax is the arrangement of words, phrases, and clauses within sentences. Because there are many correct ways to shape a sentence, an author's choices reflect his or her craft and style. Reread the sentence that begins on line 133. He was a big man, and pay special attention to the word order. What ideas do you have about why the author chose that syntax? Pause while you think. Instead of writing, he was a big, strong man, the author writes, he was a big man and strong. Instead of writing, he used his strength only to help people and never to harm them, the author uses a less straightforward syntax. He has never used his strength to harm anyone, always to help people. The effect is to emphasize the contrast between harm and help. This effect is also a storytelling voice, as if Tubman is telling a story to her followers. The author is using a variety of techniques to make sound-meaning connections, including syntax, repetition, and punctuation. Reread the sentence that begins on line 157 with, "She hesitated before." Listen for word order, repetition, and pauses. Describe the impact of these techniques. Pause while you think. The author interrupts the sentence. She hesitated before she approached the door and knocked softly, with words between the word door and the phrase and knocked. The use of commas, the repetition of the word suppose, and the thought she expresses between the dashes all emphasize the hesitation she feels. Earlier in the biography, readers learn that Tubman had prayed for the death of her master, fearing that he would sell her south on a chain gang. When her master died, she felt responsible. Reread lines 216 through 221. Find the information that connects to earlier events. Pause while you think. As Tubman aims a gun to threaten a follower, she experiences a feeling of guilt, remembering that time, years ago, when she had prayed for the death of Edward Brodus, the master. What does this comparison to an earlier event suggest about Tubman? She has a respect for life, even for the lives of those who enslaved her. The author describes Tubman's action toward a despairing fugitive to reveal another aspect of her character. Reread lines 225 through 239. Find Tubman's words and other details in these lines that offer evidence for whether you think she would have killed the despairing slave. Pause while you think. Tubman repeats, "Go on with us or die," and "We gotta go free or die." She would have killed him in order to protect the larger group and all of the helpers on the Underground Railroad, who would be ruined, fined, imprisoned. How does this situation connect or fit in with what readers have already learned about Tubman? Pause while you think. It supports the determination she has shown. It adds a new dimension by showing that she will do whatever it takes to get the runaways to freedom. The author's careful word choice has an emotional impact. Reread lines 240 through 243. Find the words that describe the middle passage. What is the impact of the word choices in this paragraph? Pause while you think. The phrases long agony and black horror are used to describe the middle passage. They suggest the terrible misery experienced by the people's ancestors. How does the first sentence develop the text's key idea, that the escape from slavery was terrifying? Pause while you think. The comparison to the Middle Passage brings the idea full circle. Their people's slavery began in terror and agony, and their escape from it will be difficult as well. After the incident in which Tubman threatens to shoot the runaway, the group seems to have changed its view of her. Reread lines 261 through 268. Identify a sentence that expresses the fugitives' changed attitude. Pause while you think. They had come to trust her implicitly, totally. What is the impact of the author's use of the synonyms implicitly and totally? Pause while you think. It emphasizes complete trust. A biographer's research includes primary sources, which are documents and other materials produced by people who witnessed or took part in historical events. Reread lines 273 through 285. Explain what is suggested about the author's research. Pause while you think. The author read William Still's record of fugitive slaves, which he published in 1872 with the title The Underground Railroad. The author has identified Still as a member of the Philadelphia Vigilance Committee in lines 189-190. Biographers draw conclusions based on their research. Reread lines 300 through 316. Which words show the author's reasoning? Pause while you think. Here they almost certainly stayed with Frederick Douglass, shows that she is using details in Douglass's autobiography to reason that the 11 fugitives who stayed with Douglass were in fact the people Tubman was leading north. Readers use what the biographer tells and shows along with what they can figure out to answer the question, what is this person like? Reread lines 321 through 331. What can you tell about Tubman from the information provided in these lines? She was hardworking, generous, strong, encouraging, and independent. The author is contrasting Tubman's destination with her starting point. Refer to the description of Canada in the lines 322 through 324. Reread lines 321 through 331. Identify details that develop the contrasts between Canada and Maryland. What is the impact of the author's word choices, parallelism, and repetition? Canada was a strange frozen land, snow everywhere, ice everywhere, and a bone-biting cold, the like of which none of them had ever experienced before. Often she found herself thinking of the beauty of Maryland, the mellowness of the soil, the richness of the plant life there. The climate itself made for an ease of living that could never be duplicated in this bleak, barren countryside. The overall impact is to create a series of stark contrasts, which reinforces the idea that Tubman is able to adapt to her environment. An author's word choices impact both the meaning and tone or feeling in a text. Reread lines 352 through 357. Identify the comparison the author is making and explain how it develops the concept of freedom. Pause while you think. The author is contrasting the warmth of summer and Maryland with the severe cold of Canada to emphasize the price the escaping slaves paid for their freedom. How do word choices such as bone-biting cold impact the tone of the paragraph? Pause while you think. Word choices that describe the extreme cold create a harsh feeling that suggests what life will be like for the newly freed slaves.